Glad to meet you, dear subscribers. Today we will look at the game of the first world champion Wilhelm Steinitz. In this game his opponent was none other than Mikhail Chigorin. 15th game of the world championship match. Steinitz moved with his king's pawn, black responded with e5, and after the initial moves the board ended up with a Spanish game. White creates indirect pressure on the e5 pawn and in the future can eliminate the defender of this pawn. Black is currently attacking the bishop. White has no opportunity to win the pawn due to the continuation of queen d4 with a double attack on the knight and pawn e4. Therefore, Steinitz retreats with the bishop back. Black develops the piece and puts pressure on the e4 pawn. White strengthens the central point e4 with his infantryman, and the continuation follows with the bishop c5, and again White has no opportunity to win the pawn on the e5 square since there will be a double blow attack on mate on the f2 square as well as on knight located on square e5. White plays c3 with the idea of building a powerful pawn center and also takes control of the d4 square and already creates the threat of winning a pawn. Black responds with b5 attacking the bishop. The bishop retreats to square c2 and a counterattack follows on the center d7 d5. In this position, it is best to exchange on the d5 square and castling to the short side. In the future, playing along the open line e, White's chances here are a little better, but the continuation in the game queen e2 is considered not the best. But Wilhelm Steinitz tried to get a closed position in a sticky positional struggle, which was not entirely pleasant for his opponent Mikhail Chigorin, and his calculation was justified. After castling short, White played bishop g5 tying up the knight. An exchange took place on square e4. With the move a6, Black attacked the bishop retreated, Black gets rid of the pin, White hides the king in a safe place, and with the move the knight h5, Mikhail Chigorin prepares a parking spot for the knight on square f4 for a subsequent attack either in the center or on the king's side. White defends point f4, Black pins the enemy knight and moves b4. After the retreat of the attacked bishop, White undermines the queenside using the weakness of point b5, and if now Black does nothing then he will simply lose the pawn on b5. Well, an exchange on square a4 leads to a weakening of the pawn structure, and a pawn located on square c7 may also turn out to be weak. White is in no hurry to win back the pawn, but for now is developing his piece. In the future, they can jump with their knight to c4, attacking the queen on the bishop and also on the pawn e5. Black should have played a5, trying to get rid of his weak pawn, and they had an even better position here, but the move in the game queen f6 allows White to take a4 onto the square. Now there is a threat of capturing c6 on the square followed by the move of the e5 knight, so Black moves his knight towards it. White activates the queen, the pawn on square e5 is in danger of winning, and Black should have exchanged one of the attacking pieces here, point e5, after the exchange on square g3 and the move rook d8. The position is approximately equal. The disadvantages of Black's pawn structure are compensated by the presence of two bishops as well as possession of the open d file. Well, and the move in the game bishop e6 is a mistake, since now White carries out a combination blow bishop e5, leaving his queen under attack, but at the same time attacking the opponent's queen. After the move, the bishop c4 White takes to f6, and it turns out that it is not profitable to break through on the f1 square because of the response bishop e7. Black has a bishop located on the f1 square under attack, while White still lacks quality. But if now Black plays the bishop e2, then the move bishop f8 will be, and after this exchange White is left with an extra pawn. If Black tries to remove the rook from the bishop's attack, then the move will be knight f1. White gets two pieces for the rook and pawn. This is, of course, a winning position for White. Therefore, on move 20, Mikhail Chigorin played knight f6. White now wins back the piece, Black wins back the pawn. An exchange takes place on square b6 and continuation rook e1. The knight cannot be removed because the knight on e7 sags. Black has to play f5, and this weakens the central square e5 where the white knight rushes. At the same time, White can easily force out the enemy knight with a continuation of f3. White has an advantage since the bishop in an open position will be clearly stronger than the knight, firstly, and Secondly, in the next few moves he will begin to move his passed pawn along line C. In the game there was the move rook c8 was made. It was impossible to hit pawn on c3 because of the counter knight on d7, attacking both the rook and the knight located on e7. If black defends the knight, then the move will be knight b6 and black has two rooks under attack. They lose the exchange and lose the game. Chigorin played here rook c8. White begins the movement of the passed pawn. Black moves the rook to the 7th rank and, if necessary, is ready to double along the open file. White forces out the enemy knight, then plays the move c3 threatening to move c5, so black removes the king from under a possible check. The move b5 is an interesting continuation. It is impossible to take due to the sagging of the rook, and on the move in the game a5 white captures the open line and prevents the black knight from maneuvering to the blockading square c5. After the move rook e8 makes a breakthrough c4 c5 forming a powerful passed pawn along the b-line. Black took the pawn on the c5 square. White played here rook b6 and is preparing to advance the pawn. Then rook b8. Black is trying to slow down the pawn. White doubled up on the open file, taking advantage of this circumstance, that it is impossible to take on the b5 square due to the fact that the king receives such a beautiful checkmate. An exchange sacrifice on the e8 square. Then the move bishop f7 and checkmate to the black king. Black had to additionally protect the 8th rank here. White advances a passed pawn. Black plays a4 and Steinitz sacrifices a piece on square a4. If you accept the sacrifice, then the move will be rook d8. After a forced exchange on e8, the pawn on file b freely passes to the queen. So black decided to escape with his king on the h7 square. White attacked the rook and the knight was exchanged on the c6 square. An attack on another rook. Black counterattacked the rook on the d6 square. White played b7 threatening to place the queen, and after the response rook a7 and rook d8. Mikhail Chigorin laid down his arms because he now threatens to capture on d8, and in the event of an exchange on the d8 square, black will lose his knight on the pin, and in the future white also advances the b-pawn to the queen. Well, if you liked this game, like it, subscribe to channel updates, click on the bell, write comments, thoughts, wishes and see you soon.